Wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Well, good morning and welcome back. It is Lou's Potpourri week 3, and waiting on the mail. The decals for the cabs did not show up over the weekend, so until the mail goes today, I'm just making myself busy with some stuff, and I figured I'd go ahead and start getting this guy ready for lighting. I have drilled out the tail lights up here, or turn signals or whatever, and I thought rather than trying to run LEDs up there, the smarter thing would be just try to run some fiber optics, and then lop them off there, and then run them to the inside, and run them to a LED. Now, where I'm stuck right now is I'm trying to figure out whether it is going to be better to pack all of this with interior and lighting and then close it up and run everything out to a base, down through a pole, to a switch, or whether I should try to make it something where I can put magnets on this maybe and pop the bottom off and keep the battery up here and just flick a switch and then put the thing back on it. I haven't really decided. The problem is this front piece is at an angle. This front grill, and it kind of seals everything together real nice and seamlessly. Seams it together seamlessly. There you go. It's Monday morning. What do you want from me? So I have to decide whether it's going to be better to glue this top and bottom, or whether it's going to be better to not. So that's where I'm at right now. I do realize that it needs some sort of base, because it's just sitting on the ground like this, and that just means everything on the bottom here is going to get scuffed up. So maybe some sort of quickie little wooden base with a metal pole. It's awfully heavy though, so that's where I'm running into problems, because as heavy as this piece is, it's, if I try to run a post up through there, what I need to do is actually make the post bigger than the hole so that it sits on it. If I run the post all the way through it, the weight is just going to let this thing sink, slide straight down the pole. All kinds of weird things like that I'm thinking about. If I do some sort of post, like a lamp post that I normally do, then I need to put a bolt right there to keep it from sinking any further down. Because like I said, this thing is heavy. It's a solid piece of resin right here. So that's the kind of stuff I'm worrying about. I'm also thinking about how much of an interior I want to try to put in here. If once you start lighting things up, then the interior becomes more visible. Obviously I want to make up some sort of mock dashboard here, and then I'm to the point of having to come up with a windshield and try to make a flat windshield fit in that curved shape. That could be interesting. I know a lot of filming models don't have glass in them for that very reason, so that when they're filmed you don't have to worry about reflections of windows, but this one kinda needs to have something there. So that's the kind of stuff. And do I do the bullet holes and the hole in the roof? And if I do the hole in the roof, then that cuts into my wiring, obviously. So these are the kinds of things that I'm pondering at this stage. And who knows, I might actually get back to finishing up this guy this week, which is my first goal. I need to get this back to Tracy. I did a little bit of work over the weekend. I really like how the edge of the rim of the saucer is looking, but the rest of it is pretty nondescript at this point, and I'm doing too much. I think I'm starting to overwork the nacelles. I'm doing too much messing around and not enough actual work on it. So it's Monday, it's model time. Let's get cracking. Okay, I'm back. Still remains to be a crappy day outside, but I went to the local RC/hobby shop, and I was looking to pick up some brass tubing, some square stock and all that, because what I want to do on this cab is just to obviously to square off some of those, but what I'd like to do is, let me find something to prop this up on so that you can see what I'm doing with one hand here, is to take this square stock, hello square stock, and use that to square out the holes, plus act as a liner for the light, for the turn signals and whatnot, because then I can putty around it and maintain that perfectly square shape. I got some round stock, or I got some square stock. I got some round tubing for the round lights, and this rectangle stock for the front headlights, which the headlights are, you can see where the holes are overly large, and these the rectangle is a little narrow for what the front headlights are, but I'm hoping that I can, kind of shove a round object in there and kind of round it out a little bit, because the headlights are a tall rectangle, but they are wider at the center than they are at the top and bottom. So hoping to get that kind of shape out of this, and that way I can bury it in the recesses here and putty up to them and make them nice and neat. But while I was there looking for that, I also found this rectangle stock. And the significance of this rectangle stock you will recognize when I do this, because it is the exact size I have been looking for a few years now. Hold on one second. Oh, look at here. Oh, looky here. Looky here. This is well, it's a big enterprise. This is my 66-inch enterprise, and it is chock-a-block full of windows. And getting these windows cut out and evenly lit is the main sticking point as to why I haven't really started on this kit. Well, now that I have found this dimension of flat stock, or rectangle stock, man, this is tough to do. Hold the phone. Okay, it is properly propped up now. But now that I have found this square stock, or this rectangle stock, I can go ahead and use this to cut out the windows, and then I could chop this into tiny pieces and use it for the actual window frames itself. So that just took this project off of the back burner and moved it slightly forward on the great stove of life. I can clean out the windows with that and the square files, and yes, things are looking good. So now this becomes a much more viable project, and as we're getting into the summer of 2019, this may be the year we do this. Who knows? Well, so I've just taken a test. I took this the rectangle stock, and used this reamer here, which I believe I got at Harbor Freight, and just jimmied it back and forth in there a couple of times, flayed out the sides, and now I've got a shape that is more pillow shaped. It is there you go. It is wider in the center than it is in the ends. And what I need to do now is cut this bit off of the end, make 5 more of these, and then push them into those holes, and then putty up around them. Okay, I've got 3 pieces cut and put in place, and now you can see where I have to jam the putty in around them to kind of clean up the outside edges of those. But hopefully that'll give me 3 nice unified sized headlights. Good morning, hello, and welcome back. It is Tuesday this time, and work is continuing on the headlights on the taxi, the Korben Dallas Taxi. Here you can see yesterday's efforts. I've got a little bit of the epoxy sculpt wrapped around in there, and I'm sanding those flush. Here's what I've done this morning. I just cut off 3 more pieces, and you can see how they stick out from the edge. Now what I'm going to do is just take a file, and because brass is fairly soft, I'm just going to file that down to make sure that it follows the contours of the bumper, and then pack the edges around. I've got a little bit of the epoxy putty in there this morning because I made the hole way too big, frankly, but better too big than trying to squeeze it into something that's a little too small. So now I've got fairly uniform headlights and can get on with the rest of it. I've also put in the circular ones because those are easy. That's just a regular drill bit and then some aluminum tubing. I have to go back out to the hobby shop because the square stuff that I bought yesterday is too big, and they had smaller stuff there, and I should have picked that up instead, but I did not. So I need to run back out and get the smaller stuff today. And here we go, all nice and grounded down, and just had a little grinding stone in the Dremel, which is the best way to do it since it not only contours this way around the curve, but also flares out from top to bottom. So best thing to do would be to put the tube in square and then just grind it down till it matches the contours of the bumper. So just a little bit of Bondo around the edges to kind of fill that in, and we'll have a finished set of headlights. Alrighty, I'm back from the hobby shop, and you can see I found a smaller square stock, and I'm just starting to put them in there to line those holes and ironically square up the holes. Had to cut off a piece of the larger one that I had so that I made sure I didn't duplicate that. So I nipped off a little piece of that, took it with me, and made sure the new one was going to be smaller than the old one. Tough to tell there, but yeah, it's a little bit smaller. So now I'm just going to finish filling out those holes and epoxying them or CA gluing them in. The mail has gone yet again today and still no decals, so I'm kind of getting towards the end of the rope because I really want to get these guys finished, but you know, what can you do? Okay, I've gotten all of the turn signals and brake lights and headlights all lined, with the exception of the main brake lights in the back because they are too big for the there was no brass stock that was that size, so that's big enough that we can leave it as is. And what I'm gonna do is put a box in here with some red strip lights to light that up and some white strip lights up front to light that up. I don't know if I'm gonna put individual lights in the headlights or not. Haven't quite decided on that. We'll have to see how we're going to play that, depending on how much light we get out of the strip lights, as to whether or not we need to add any more. Also need to consider that bottom one, so I need to cut a channel out for that to allow me to put a yellow LED in there. But going well, going pretty well. I have to start thinking about mocking up the dashboard and all that kind of stuff. Good morning. It is Thursday, and I am bound and determined to get this Constellation ship at least mostly finished today, if not completely. Hopefully ready for decaling, which I can do tomorrow and finish up, and then I can get this thing mailed out this weekend. Anyway, what I did is I come up with a quick little mask for some plating around the saucer. There's an outside ring and an inside ring, and then I'll flip them back and forth and move them around and do various colors. But that's going to be the best way I can think to simulate different levels of plating. I've got some grays, and I've got one metallic kind of laid out here, and some round masks, so big masks, so that I don't have to get overspray. So let's see what kind of trouble I can get into here. Okay, I'm ready to put the Constellation aside. I've got the top nice and done, and of course that's been clear coated. I've worked on the nacelles, and those are clear coated. And no, they've not been clear coated yet. I've got to do that next, and then do the final construction so that I can decal that. The good news is the mail has come, and I do have decals for the taxi cab finally. Unfortunately, there is no white backing on these, like I was afraid there was not going to be. So I need to paint a white strip. But now that I know how wide the decals are, or how wide the checkerboards are, I know how wide that white strip needs to be. So let's take care of that first. Okay, I know it's kind of tough to see all this yellow on yellow on yellow, but what I've done here is put the yellow vinyl down where the white area needs to be painted. So that gives me a nice uniform thickness of the area where the white needs to go. So what I need to do at this point would be to mask up to that tape and then pull that tape off, and that will give me the area where the white paint will go. Hopefully this will all make sense, but you can see that's how tall that stripe is going to be. All right, I've got both cabs masked off. I figured best to do them both at the same time while I got the paint out, even though they are at two different stages of completion. Had I had these decals from the start, what I would have done and what I would recommend you do if you decide to get this kit, and I think you should because it's a neat little taxi, is to, remember when I had primed the entire thing in white before I sprayed the first coat of yellow? What I would recommend you do is spray the entire primer white and then mask off that 1/4 of an inch strip. Actually, no, it's more like a heavy 1/8 of an inch strip, and leave that white so that when you peel that strip off, you'll still have the white underneath. That's what I would recommend. Paint the rest of the thing yellow, but leave that area clear, closed off, so that you can more easily decal it. So let's get the white on it. So here you can see I've taken the tape off of the one that I'm building for myself, so that you can see what is left, and that is a white strip there. Now I need to touch this area back up with the gray, but that's not a big deal. I can do that fairly easy. But it gives you a white basis to put the decal over. So I just need to do that on this one, but before that I want to give it a quick clear coat, just to give the decal something glossy to stick to. So I'll do that before I take up all this tape, and then I will be ready to put the decal down on this, and it will be, well, that stripe decal, but then the rest of them, and then this will be all done. I do need to put a clear coat over I think, I'll probably put a flat coat over it to finish it, but I want to mask off the windows to keep those nice and glossy when I put the flat coat down. So let's give this a quick clear coat. Boy, say that 5 times real fast. A quick clear coat just over the white area that I've painted. Okay, the time has come to start putting some decals down, and we're going to start on this side. Hardest part, I think, is going to be making them meet up in there and wrapping around the corners. So I think the first place to start is just right here, and start going around and seeing how well they lay down. Now it's got a black line along the top, and I am going to do my best to make sure that that black line meets up with this edge where the yellow and white meet. Right in, excuse me, right in here. So let's see how it goes. Okay, that's the first one down, and I've learned a couple valuable lessons from that. First of which is, it is designed, where's my finger? It is designed to stop at that point and go to that point. So these have been more carefully laid out than I thought just by looking at the sheet. I thought they were just a simple strip of it, but no, it has actually been thought out to stop at that point and wrap around to that point. There's one spot up on the front bumper, or one front fender, that was probably my fault for dipping down too far or not painting the white wide enough. So that's something to look out for. But let's go do the rest and see how it turns out. Okay, so this is where we're going to leave it for this evening. I have had a couple of major decal snafus. You'll notice it's missing its name right there because the decal that I had laid down, when I came back, it was rolled up like an armadillo, and I couldn't flatten it back out again, so that was a write-off. Tracy's going to put a new decal on it when he gets the kit sent back to him. He's going to re-decal it on his end, so I went ahead and did the sideboard ones here, and now this is ready. It'll dry all night, and then I'll put a flat coat on that in the morning. And the same deal with the taxi. You can see how the checkerboard has laid in nice and good. Now, I figured out the problem was back in here is the way this is sculpted. You can see the license plate stops there. In the actual filming model, the license plate comes down to the bumper area, which means there's a break in the checkerboard there, which is why the decal wasn't long enough, because the decal was designed for this to be going all the way down to the bottom. So easier to change the decal sheet than it is to resculpt all of this at this point. So I have taken some of my decals from the second sheet that I have and patched that in, and then Tracy's going to send me one to replace mine. So when I go to build mine, I'll have enough decals. But that's the long and the short of it. Got all the B90s on. So all I need to do now is let that dry overnight and give it a good chance to settle down, and then give it a flat coat in the morning, and it'll be done. We'll be finishing up these guys easily this week, I believe. Okay, kids, it's Friday. It's been a weird day. I just have been in a funk, and I don't know why. So I'm slow to get started exactly on what I need to do. I've been running around in circles trying to get my schedule straight for today. These are the 3 kits that I need to send back to Tracy. You've seen this one before. I finished it up a couple of weeks ago, and it's just been sitting. I wanted to give you one last look before I boxed it up. This is his cab. That is parts of my cab over there, but this is the cab that I need to mail back to Tracy, and it's all finished. Now it is what I call the clean version. It is the clean version of the cab. It is not all shot up, and it doesn't have a big gaping hole there where Lilu fell through the ceiling or through the roof. But it's done. It's heavy as all get out. Makes a nice paperweight. It does not have its own base, though, or its own. Yeah, it doesn't have its own base. It could stand to have like a little, maybe an acrylic rod that that it sits on, so it looks like it's floating. That would be a neat thing, but it doesn't have that. It also does not have, and I'm trying to find where my little mock-up went. I don't see it anywhere. It does not have the cab or the taxi sign that goes on the roof, because up until the time that Lilu falls through the roof, there is a little lit taxi sign there. It ends up hanging on the inside of the cabin. Once she falls in, it kind of goes in with her, and you can see it hanging behind Korben as he drives. So I made up just a little temporary one that Tracy can decide to either glue on in place or not, but that's going to be his call. And then the third kit that needs to go back to him is this Constellation with the decal missing. He said he was going to take care of putting a new decal for the name on there. Now this one here did lay down. It's still not perfectly flat, but it did lay down. After looking at it last night, I was deeply afraid that it was just going to roll up like its brethren did. The ones on the nacelles seem to have settled down. They're not so shabby, the numbers on the nacelles there. But this is ready to go back. So what I need to do now is kind of get everything packed up. I've already packed up the Icarus to go back to Richard. I haven't mailed it out yet, so that's something I need to do. What I want to do is try to get as many of these things done so that I can make one trip to the post office tomorrow and kind of take everything in at the same time. So I'm going to give these a couple of little last looks, and then we're going to package them up and get them ready to go in the mail. Alrighty, now we're almost ready to close up for a Friday afternoon, and indeed for the week. But before we do, I wanted to show you this one last little bit. This may look like a disgusting industrial accident or some sort of a nasty cut, but it is in fact nothing more than some 15-minute epoxy mixed up with a little bit of clear red Tamiya. And what I've done is I mixed it up and poured it into the taillights of the taxi and let it set up. And I've got a piece of tape over the outside of it to keep it from running out the bottom. so that when you're done, you get something like that. That is basically clear tinted red epoxy. You can see it. I'm showing it through the light of the overhead lamp. The goal is to put LEDs in it. There you go. You can see it that way. Put LEDs in here and let that shine out, and something like this, without making too many hot spots. If I keep it farther back, I can avoid too many hot spots. And I haven't really decided whether I'm going to use a single bulb or whether I'm just going to use a little red strip of red LEDs back in there. But that's where we're going to close it off for this week. Starting to light up my own version of the cab. And that's what we'll be doing next week. And that, my friends, is where we're going to end it for this week. Got the potpourri is kind of getting down to the bottom of the barrel. If I don't mix my metaphors too desperately there. So next week we'll probably get on with super detailing and lighting and working on this taxi, and whatever else I can scrounge up around here to fill out the week. That is what we'll be doing. So until next week, when we will be tackling this very subject, be good to one another instead of each. Be good to one another. And we'll see you right back here next time.